talk about are those ATP, NADPH, well really ATP, that molecule. Okay? What did I say that ATP did?
Never mind. I'm thinking about motorcycle bikes. Never mind.
Provides energy to do what? Does it make carbon dioxide?
Takes oxygen.
No. ATP provides energy to break down carbon dioxide and turn it into sugar. Okay? Alright? But ATP is an extremely important molecule. One of the most important in the human body. Okay? Because it not only works in photosynthesis, but it also works in humans. There's ATP in humans as well. Okay? All animal cells. Okay? So, ATP is an energy transport molecule. So what it does is it transfers energy. It takes it from this place to this place. Moves it from one place to the other. Okay?
Is it transport molecule?
Not that type of transport molecule. It's an energy transport molecule. It moves it from one place to the other. Okay? So, today what we're going to talk about is how ATP does that. How it transfers that energy and then releases it. Okay? And the great thing about ATP is it's like a lot of things we use today. It's recyclable. Okay, tell me about some things that are recyclable.
Paper.
Paper, aluminum, cans, what else? Plastic bottles. All those things, metals, all those things are recyclable. Okay, now, one person raise their hand and tell me how those things, how do they get recycled?
By the recycling bin thing.
So raise your hand.
Raise your hand. Yes.
They're broken down. Like, do they use heat to break them down?
Okay, well, without going through the whole process, okay, it's not like I can just take a piece of paper, put it in the recycling bin, pull it back out, and it's a fresh piece of paper, right? So it has to go through some sort of process to go from paper to reusable paper again, okay? Or from a used bottle to a new bottle, okay? Yes?
Goes to machinery.
Okay, it does. It goes, some of it's melted down, some of it is, there's a bunch of processes that it's used, okay? But then, eventually, it goes through that process and then it can be used again, right? ATP is the same way, okay? ATP breaks or uses that energy that it has stored up, and then it goes through a process and can be reused again. So it's ATP, it breaks down, and then it turns back into ATP. And that's called the ATP-ADP cycle. The ATP-ADP cycle. Okay? Alright, and so the ATP-ADP cycle means that it goes from ATP, which is formed right here, and goes through, powers hydrolysis, powers something else, and then it splits apart, it's turned into ADP, and then reforms into ATP. Okay? So just like anything else, just like people say it takes money to make money, right? Well, it takes energy to make energy. Alright, and where do we get that energy from? Where do we get our energy? Raise your hands. Huh? Well, okay, we get it from the sun ultimately, and then it goes into where? From the sun's energy is transferred into what? Hmm? Well, how do we get that energy from the sun? We don't photosynthesize. What do we do with it?
We were eating.
We eat, right?
Yeah.
We eat. So, that sun's energy is captured in the plants, and then from there, we eat it. When we eat it, then it's transferred into us. We make ATP, and then the cycle begins. ATP, ADP cycle begins. Make sense? All right. So 3.3 says, recognize the overall structure of ATP, namely adenosine, the sugar, ribose, and phosphate groups, including ATP and ADP cycle. All right. So in other words, what you need to know is you need to know what ATP looks like. You need to know what ADP looks like, and its parts, and how it goes from one to the other. Okay. So, ATP. What is ATP? ATP is called adenosine triphosphate. So, that's why we say ATP. Because adenosine triphosphate just gets real old to say after a while. Okay, so adenosine triphosphate. The most important biological molecule because of what it does. Okay? Because we need it to provide energy to ourselves as animals. Plants need it to provide energy to their cells. ATP is composed of three things. A nitrogenous base called adenine, a sugar, a 5-carbon sugar, ribose, and 3 phosphate groups bonded by high energy bonds. And we'll talk about what those mean in just a second. Okay, ADP is called adenosine diphosphate. And the only difference between ADP and ATP is that ADP has a lot less energy and has one less phosphate group. Okay? So adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphate groups, adenosine diphosphate, 2 phosphate groups. So over here, I have a drawing of ATP. So here's a nitrogenous base. Here's adenosine. Here's ribose. Or sorry, so this is adenine, my bad. This is adenine. This is ribose. Together, these two form a compound called adenine. Okay? Or sorry, adenosine. This is adenine. This is ribose. Together, this is adenosine. And then 1, 2, 3, triphosphates. Okay? And there is a picture of this on your notes. I just want you to see it so you know what it is. And then here are the high energy bonds. The bonds between the phosphates are the high energy bonds. Okay? So this is adenosine. 1, 2, 3, triphosphate. Alright? What happens is that this last phosphate, when this bond breaks, the stored energy is released. And it goes from adenosine triphosphate to now adenosine diphosphate. Because this phosphate group is no longer bonded. That bond breaks. So it goes from ATP to ADP. Okay? The only thing we have to do to restore it to ATP is bond another phosphate group to it. And that takes energy. So that's why it takes energy to make energy. Alright, so, like we said, ATP stores energy and releases it. It's built with food that we eat. It makes ATP. Then it releases that ATP, or releases the energy, by ADP, and turns into ADP, and then uses energy again to make it ATP. So here is the drawn out molecule. So here's the adenine, here's the ribose, so this is adenosine right here. And then here's the 3 phosphate groups. You're not going to have to draw that in the test, but you are going to have to recognize it. Okay? So the actual cycle. So those 3 phosphate groups supply the energy. Okay, and that energy is supplied by what we eat. So when the energy is released, it's because the bonds are broken. When the bond is formed, energy is used. So just like those papers that you throw away, the bottles, the aluminum cans you put in the recycling bin, just like they're reused and turned back into plastic or aluminum or whatever, ADP is recycled back into ATP. So ATP is formed, transfers the energy somewhere, bonds are broken, energy is released, it's now ADP. Energy is used to form that bond to turn ADP back into ATP, and then it's used again. Alright, so again, there's the ATP-ADP cycle. Okay, so ATP, here's the adenine, ribose, phosphate group. So now its energy is available to be used in whatever cellular work is needed. And then, as it's used, now the phosphate group goes away. You have ADP. And then energy from either food or from sunlight, if it's a plant, bonds the phosphate group back to the ADP to make it ATP, and it starts all over. Okay? ATP, bond breaks. Energy is used. ADP. Energy put back into ADP to make ATP. ATP, bond breaks. Energy is given off. Energy is taken in to make ADP, to make it ATP, and the cycle works over and over again. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so energy is used to make ATP. Energy is given off by ATP, makes ADP. Then energy is used to make ADP back into ATP.